All right, good morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, January, what is it, the 5th? So welcome to 2026. I know for about 15 days or so, I'm going to keep writing 2025 when I write the date down, and I'm sure some of you will do the same. Today, I'm really thankful to Dr. Schulick for having agreed to give grand rounds. I asked him to give grand rounds today a month or two ago, and at first, I think he was hesitant, but then he realized that this would be a good opportunity to speak to the department at this time. You know, typically we get up here and give an introduction to a speaker by going through their academic resume, talking about where they went to school and where they did their training and how many publications they have. But, you know, I didn't think, why would I do that to introduce Dr. Schulick this morning? I think all of you know most about his academic pedigree, so to speak. But instead, what I thought I would do is tell you a brief story about something that Dr. Schulick did that directly impacted me, but more so because I think it illustrates a lot about how Dr. Schulick cares for all of you and the department and the patients, the family, and the community. Most of you will remember that he arrived here in 2012. And the story I'm going to tell you very briefly occurred on July 20th of 2012. I remember exactly where I was in the hospital when he called me that morning. And that date might not mean much to you, but that's the date following the Aurora Theater shooting. The Aurora Theater shooting occurred at midnight on Thursday night, the night before. University Hospital received 24 patients, all within about an hour and a half. One was dead on arrival. The other 23 patients all arrived, and all of them survived. The next morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Schulick called me up and said, "Are you doing okay?" And my response to him was, "Yeah, I've got a team of residents. I've got a couple of extra faculty. We've divided up the list of patients. Everybody's getting a tertiary review. We're looking at every lab. We're looking at every x-ray again. I think we've got all the patient problems solved. There's no issues. I think we're in control." And he said, "You know, that's not really what I'm asking. I'm asking, are you doing okay?" And we had a brief conversation, and towards the end of that conversation, he said to me, "I'm going to find some resources for the residents. People are going to be traumatized by this event, and they need to be able to have resources to help them and deal with this tragedy." And then he went about doing that, and I didn't have to do that. You know, I never would have thought of that. It never even crossed my mind that the team of people who had taken care of these 24 patients would have ever needed maybe to talk about it. And as you think about over the course of the last, 13 years? If I can, math is not my strong suit. If you think about the course of the last 13 years, a lot of what Dr. Schulick has done over this time, that story illustrates exactly how he approaches things. Shortly after he arrived, he had a strategic retreat with the leadership in the department, and we came up with mission, vision, and values. And the statement, "Improve every life," is so short, but yet speaks a lot of words about how he thinks about the Department of Surgery. And I think that the middle word, every, is one of the key words in improve every life. And it's not just patients, it's not just their families, it's all of us. And that is the debt that I think I owe Dr. Schulick, is because he has improved my life. And I think he's improved every life in the community that we have here at the University of Colorado. And with that, I noticed that his title is one of my favorite philosophers, David Byrne. None of you know who David Byrne is? How did I get here?
Thank you, Dr. McIntyre, Rob. Thank you for those very kind words. And it really has been a true privilege to lead this Department of Surgery. I'm extremely proud of it. And I think many people would criticize me for jumping out of a perfectly good plane. This is a department that's on the move. It has accomplished great things, and it will continue to accomplish great things. And congratulations, Rob, on your leadership of this department. So, how did I get here? I think some of you have heard this saying, when you see a turtle on top of a fence post, you know he or she had some help. And it's certainly true of me, and it's true of all of you. And some of you are just beginning. And one of the keys, I think, to accomplishing great things, helping the world, helping society, helping patients, is mentorship. The mentorship-mentee relationship is so important. And throughout this talk, I'm going to talk about some of my mentors, not to just thank them and talk about them, but to tell specifically how they helped me and many others. And I'll give you examples. So just a little bit of background. I know some of you know this, but my childhood was actually all over the world. These red arrows are the countries that I lived in up until the age of 18 years old. So I moved around a lot. I lived in different cultures, different religions, different ways of interacting. And in retrospect, it was hard moving around like that, but I gained so much from that. And I think one of the keys and one of the things that's lacking, I think, in a lot of what's going on now is tolerance and understanding other people and understanding other cultures. And I think this is something that we as a society should keep working on. These yellow areas are the places that I've lived since the age of 18. And you can see most of it's concentrated in the United States, but I did spend 6 months as a registrar in Dublin, Ireland, in Beaumont Hospital. And that was eye-opening to me, to actually work in another healthcare delivery system with a national health service. They do a lot of things that are better than we do here, and they do a lot of things that are not as good as we do here. But having experienced something like that, I think was very informative to me, and I think helped me in decision-making later on in my career. So the countries I've lived in, I was born in Rangoon, Burma. Raise your hand if you know somebody else who was born in Rangoon, Burma. That's what I thought, 0. So, I actually lived there for a year. I was born there because my father was a US diplomat, and that's where he was assigned, and that's where I was born. Then we moved to a city in the north of Thailand, and this is probably the most flattering picture of that city or town. It's an air base, and this was around the Vietnam War, and my father was a liaison between the military and the government, and so I basically lived on this air base during the Vietnam War for 3 years. Then we moved to the capital city of Bangkok, and this is where my mother is from, Bangkok, Thailand. So in a way, it was being home, especially for her. And actually, my first language was Thai. It wasn't English. The first language I learned was Thai. And I later learned English when I actually went to school. My father went to graduate school at UPenn, so I spent a year in Philadelphia. Then he was assigned back to the State Department in Washington, D.C., so that's where I went to middle school. And then I went to middle school and beginning of high school and in New Delhi, India, which was really a great experience. And then, as part of my childhood, yes, it was rough, but there were some perks. to living overseas. The picture in the upper left are my parents and my brother Andrew and myself. That picture in the upper right, I was actually in the US Boy Scouts in India, and this was during a jamboree, and the president of India, noticed that our uniforms looked a little bit different. So he walked up to me and started touching all of my merit badges and all that kind of business. So that is a Suburban from the 1970s that we traveled all over India with my family. Back then flying was not a good idea. And, we went north, south, east, west in that Suburban. And everyone recognizes the Taj Mahal there. So I want to just spend a couple of minutes on family and how important family is. And, that woman in the back, my mother, actually graduated from university in Thailand, the top university, at the top of her class. And she told her father, I want to go to medical school. And my grandfather said, well, women don't go to medical school. Women don't become doctors. So you're not going to medical school. And, I don't think they talked for, a decade after that. Instead, the second oldest, who was a son, went to medical school. So she was so mad, she applied for a Fulbright scholarship, came to the United States, went to graduate school here, and got graduate degrees in teaching English, and went back to Thailand, published books, and they still actually use her textbook for learning English as a Thai student. But, I think because of that experience, she would torture us in car rides, telling us why we had to become physicians, both my brother and I. She would torture my kids, driving them around, telling them why they had to be physicians. And I think it was all because she was denied this opportunity to do something that she really wanted to do. So that's maybe why my brother is a vascular surgeon. He works at Johns Hopkins. And I have 3 children, and all 3 of them, and many of you know them, Alex, Nikki, and Victor, have gotten degrees from the University of Colorado. The 2 older ones graduated from medical school here, and the younger one is in dental school here. So, I owe the University of Colorado many things, but also the education and training of my children. And, here are some pictures of them in white coats, and I'm very proud of them. So after I went back to Washington, D.C. to finish up high school, I trained at basically 3 institutions: Johns Hopkins, the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, and Memorial Sloan Kettering. And I'm not going to go through all my degrees and my experiences, but if you notice, they're all very different, right? Engineering, right? Immunology, pharmacology, right? MBA. So one of the things I'm proud of is that, I didn't go with status quo. I was always very interested in making a change, doing something totally different, and turning 180 degrees, right? And I think that there's some lesson here, maybe, that, we're all kind of sent on this pathway. It's okay every once in a while to say, you know what, I know everyone does this. I know this is not normal, but I'm switching directions. And I think that's okay. And you know what? It served me pretty well. So I've had 2 jobs since finishing training. The first was on faculty at Johns Hopkins for 13 years. And I kind of followed the traditional surgeon scientist route. And then in 2012, I was lucky enough to get selected to become the chair of surgery here, right? And then on top of that, 7 years ago, 8 years ago now almost, I was asked to lead the cancer center as the director and the PI on the P30 core grant, which is the largest grant that I've ever seen. It's about a 2,000-page monstrosity that takes really a year and a half to write up. And it's been really an incredible experience. All this, writing papers, getting grants, leading things, it's all great. But the most beautiful part of what I have been able to do is to interact with so many talented people, trainees, junior faculty, senior faculty, the ability to recruit people and to help people in their careers. And that's been what has given me the most joy. So I was actually asked a couple of years ago to talk at one of the yearly lectureships at Johns Hopkins. And my main topic was mentorship. You know, why is mentorship important? Well, you know, all of you in this room are intelligent. You all work hard. You have a lot of talent. You have EQ. You have grit. But that doesn't necessarily get you to success, right? There's a couple of other key things that are really important. Most of them under your control, but not everything totally under your control, right? So selecting the right environment to work in, and I think we have a great environment here at the University of Colorado. Selecting great mentors, right? And you know, that's a plural noun, right? If you need mentors in all different areas that you want to learn about, that you want to emulate. And, you know, I think more than one, two, even three mentors is good. And I'll show you how I selected my mentors. You need a little bit of luck, right? But again, you know, if you're prepared, as I think Fleming said, right? Chance favors the prepared mind, right? So we all have good luck and we all have bad luck, right? It happens to all of us. If you minimize the bad luck, but you seize on the good luck, you go even further, right? And this is a very, very important principle. So you put this all together and you become successful. You know, I think all of you in this room, the great majority of you in this room will become successful or already successful. You just have to find your place. Now, this mentorship thing, I want to delve into a little bit. So, you know, most of you probably don't even know what Merriam-Webster is, but you know, it was a book that sat on our table that gave a definition. So what's the definition of mentor, right? So the first one, Odysseus, you know, what's all that? Telemachus, we'll get back to that. But, you know, a mentor is a trusted counselor or guide, a tutor or a coach, right? That, you know, these two make a lot of sense. But what's that number one business, right? So mentor actually is from mythology, right? So Odysseus, the Iliad, when Odysseus had to leave for the Trojan War, right? Does anyone remember how long the Trojan War was? You can guess. 10 years. 10 years. The Trojan War was 10 years, and it took him another 10 years to get back, right? That's the Odyssey, right? So he was basically away for 20 years. He didn't know he was going to be away that long, but he kind of felt, I'm going to be away for a while. He had a young son by the name of Telemachus, and he was married to Penelope, right? This is from the Iliad. And he had Mentor who was running his household. And he told Mentor, I want you to take care of my son Telemachus while I'm away. So that's how the term mentor developed, right? Mentor was Telemachus's mentor. You know, the story gets a lot more complicated than that, and I'm not going to go into the details, but, you know, he came back 20 years later. Telemachus had grown up, had some issues, but basically was sorted out as a good person and a good leader. And that's how the term mentor came about, mentor and mentorship, right? Now, we all talk about how to be a good mentor, right? And I've got a lot of these up here. You know, mentor challenges you, is experience, is where you want to be. They support you. They know how to listen, is invested in your success, truly wants you to succeed, guides you to the answer, doesn't necessarily give you the answer, but gives you the tools to get to the answer, provides constructive feedback. An important quality of a mentor is to tell you when you mess up, that mentor should softly, gently say, I would have done it differently. This is how I might approach it the next time. That's a very important quality of a mentor. They respect you, and maybe most important, they're available. If you have an issue, you want to discuss something, you can get a hold of them, right? What we don't talk about are the characteristics of a good mentee, right? So a good mentee helps drive the process. They're motivated. They listen and accept guidance and feedback, but not everything, right? Sets realistic goals. They're reliable, trustworthy. You know, your mentor often tells you stories about how she or he failed, right? You keep those confidential, right? Looks to be challenged, flexible to new ideas, shows initiative, and appreciates the mentor. How many of you regularly call somebody who helped you out 10 years ago or 5 years ago, sends them an email? I just want to say Happy New Year, right? I want to thank you for all the help that you gave me, right? Think about it. It's the new year right now, right? Reach out, email somebody, call somebody. So in preparation for this, I actually said, well, you know, everyone I operated with taught me something. And I actually went through all my cases at PGY R1 through R5, tallied up the cases and looked at how many unique attendings I operated with during my training. And I've got every picture that was available on the internet, I got out of those 97. Right? And you can see people you might even recognize, you know, Charlie Yo, Keith Lillimo's up there, Pam Lipsett, Henry Pitt, Selwyn Vickers is all the way to the right here on the top. You know, Duke Cameron, a cardiac surgeon, I operated with him. Training was a little bit different back then. And then, you know, the other thing is it's a small world. There are two people on here who are now faculty at the University of Rochester, who taught me when I was a resident at Hopkins, who are on faculty. Walter Pagoli is chief of pediatric surgery, and Luke Schoeniger at the bottom, and I'm not going to point these people out because it doesn't really matter. And look at the other thing. I've hired some of these people on the list here too, who were technically my attending because they were ACS a year or two ahead of me. And it's a very small world. So this is my frequent flyer mentor list. So Lance Pohl, he was a scientist at the NIH. He was also a neighbor of mine, a couple doors down when I was going to high school. John Cameron, I think he's been here giving grand rounds. Murray Brennan, you know, Drew Pardoll has been here giving grand rounds, and Julie Freischlag has been here. And they all were mentors in a little bit of a different way. So Lance Pohl, he was a couple doors down from me. And I was looking for a summer job when I was 16 at the NIH. And, you know, my mom is a tiger and basically found him and you know, basically set me up with a summer job when I was 16 at the NIH. I could bicycle to work to the NIH. And he later confided in me, the toughest interview I've ever had in my career was when your mom interviewed me to see whether you could, you know, go in his lab, my lab. And, you know, but he gave me a project. He said, if you purify this protein, cytochrome P450 reductase, you know, if you purify that protein, I'll put you in every paper in which we use that protein. So, you know, I would work 24/7. I would bicycle to the NIH at 1 a.m. You know, at that time, you purified proteins by running them in columns. Sometimes the protein came off at 2 a.m, whatever. But I purified this protein, and it took me 2 summers to do. But and then he put me on these papers, right? So I was published when I was 19 years old. And I think that was one of the key things that really piqued my interest in science and also helped me in my career in medicine. So the next character, mentor, I should say, I ran into was John Cameron. And I actually wrote a paper about his mentorship. And you can look this up, Annals of Surgery. And the key things I learned from him were that just surround yourself with talented people and stay out of their way. Let them do what they're good at doing. You know, help them, support them, but stay out of their way. Focus on important problems and take positions, leadership positions that you love, and you never have to work another day in your life, right? And, you know, It's true. The great majority of days, I actually enjoy waking up, coming to work. Yeah, there's some days where it's like, oh, that's going to be a big problem, that I might be a little slow to get up. But, for the most part, I really enjoy getting up, coming to work, and doing all the things that we get to do. It's a true privilege. This is a paper from 7, 8 years ago, looking at all the different leaders he's trained. And in total, John Cameron has trained 56 chairs of surgery, positioned all around the United States. So this was a bubble map of where all the people he trained ended up in the United States, and the red dots are where they were chairs of surgery. And that's really impressive. And he had something special in terms of being a mentor at driving people in this direction, if this is the direction you want to go. It's not the right direction for everyone, but for some, and he tended to select these people, and he pushed their careers. The next person that really changed my life was Murray Brennan. He was chair at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And this is a picture of the 6 fellows that year that graduated in 1999. And he had a knack for mentorship also, in pushing people to leadership positions. So, starting on the right, Joe Espat was chair of surgery at Roger Williams. He's now retired, the first one of our group to retire. Andy Smith is CEO of Sunnybrook at the University of Toronto and leads a lot of healthcare in Canada. Steve Hockwald is Cancer Center Director at Mount Sinai. Ron DiMatteo is chair at UPenn. And then David Linehan, the guy on the left, was chair of surgery at the University of Rochester, but he became dean and CEO at the University of Rochester. And guess who recruited me to the University of Rochester? It's a small world, okay? And the friends you trained with, that you trained with, the people you meet now, they're all going to circle around. You're going to be working for them. They're going to be working for you. They're going to help build your career. And that is an extremely important lesson. And it wasn't just a fluke. The class behind us also produced several chairs of surgery. Loma Linda, WashU St. Louis, UC San Diego, and University of Tennessee. And some of these folks have been through giving grand rounds, and others, I bet you many of you know. So on the very first day of fellowship, Murray Brennan hands me this card. It's an index card, and I think it was actually typed. You can see by the type, the way this is typed out. And it's all beat up because he gave it to me in 1997. I hung it on my fridge for a while, and it's been in various places. But he said, here are 10 principles that are really important. Adulation is a soporific. I bet you not everyone knows soporific, so it's actually defined at the bottom. Thinking is not usually painful. Growing is more important than succeeding. Biology beats technique every time. Surgical oncologists are guilty of ignoring biology sometimes, thinking technique is going to win everything. Beware of Harvard answers. He trained at Harvard, so he used that. But a Harvard answer is an answer to a question that is true and accurate, but doesn't address the question that was asked, right? And he hated, people who gave an answer that had nothing to do with the question. A mentor helps. Bring one or find one. Important point. We talked about it. You have to take risks. Never be satisfied. Taking care of a cancer patient is not a part-time job. And, there's an important principle. Yeah, there's wellness and balance and all these things, but taking care of patients is not a part-time job. And then the last one is, you are a surgeon, do something, right? It's more than differential diagnoses and that kind of it. You actually have to do something. You're a surgeon. When I became chair of surgery, he sent me this next card and he said, Rich, you've graduated. Here's 10 more principles that I want you to be aware of, right? So once a mentor, always a mentor. Be fair, be consistent, confront problems as they occur. Don't, procrastinate. Never reward bad behavior. Do not keep score, but don't forget. The future lies with young people. They're the most important people in the room. Chauvin was a person. Do not repeat his mistakes. And I've got a little footnote on Nicholas Chauvin. time is the only absolutely limited resource. All of you worry about money, you worry about space, you worry about many things, but your only limited resource is time. All those other things will come to you, right? In time, not as fast as you want, but time is your limited resource. Mentor needed Athena to succeed, and I won't go into that story, but he's nodding to mentorship. And the last one, beware of bloviated or palaverous replies. I've defined both of those at the bottom. I didn't know what they meant too when he sent it to me. So these are all very, very important lessons. My scientific career really was and has been and is still being mentored by Drew Pardole. And I had the privilege of actually having people in my laboratory that were co-mentored by me and Drew Pardole. And these are some of the folks that have come through. And again, it's a small world, right? Barish et al., right, was in my lab, right? And I recruited him here to be chief of surgical oncology. He since went to become chair at University of Oklahoma, but it's a small world. This continually happens. We recruit each other, and it's people that you meet during training, during the mentor-mentee relationship, and so important. And then Julie Freischlag was, probably my most interesting mentor because she was so different in many ways from all the other mentors that I had. But she took me under her wing, promoted me from an assistant professor, associate professor to full professor, moved me around, my office around, depending on where she thought I would get the most bang for the buck, made me chief of surgical oncology, gave me the John L. Cameron professorship, made me deputy director of the Archives of Surgery at that time, educated me on inclusion and what it meant to be a woman in surgery. And she taught me a lot, and not just a woman, but somebody who was not in the mainstream of surgery. And I learned so much from her. And she always gave me frank feedback, sometimes a little bit too frank, but really took pride in my successes. And she's mentored a lot of people in this room too, right? People are nodding their heads. I have had the great fortune also of helping with some of these people in very small ways and in others in more significant ways. In my roles at Johns Hopkins, my role here as chair of surgery, my role as cancer center director. And I'm not saying, they wouldn't have made it without me, but I had, a part to do with their success. And I also pushed people. And many of you get upset with me when you come and meet with me. And, and I say, well, maybe you have to look at other opportunities, maybe to become chief or to become promoted or to do the next thing, you have to look somewhere else, right? And that's what, John Cameron and Murray Brennan did to me and Julie Freischlag did to me. And that's what I say to you, right? Now, yes, we would rather keep you in the department, but if there's truly a better job somewhere else and it's a true promotion, you should look at it. And we should help you get that job, right? And that's what's been done for me my entire career. Okay, so, depending on who your next chair is, you might not have to listen about pancreas cancer and pancreas surgery and whatever, but you don't know, right? So I'm going to take this last shot at you, okay? So, one of the things I'm really proud of, I'm proud of 100 different programs in this department of surgery, but this is the program I lived in, right? And it's the pancreatic surgery. And you look at, where we were when I first started and where we are today, and you look at the team that we built here, it's something I'm very proud of. Now, this has been reproduced in every division over many different diseases, many different types of surgery. And so this is just a small window into the Department of Surgery at what's gone on here. But I'm very proud of the growth in pancreatic surgical volume. And, and I'm also proud of the fact that I recruited an international leader like Marco Del Chiaro, and he in turn has recruited other international leaders and trainees, and really has built, I think, the top pancreas program in the world. And yeah, there's some programs that may be a little bit higher volume, but the depth and breadth of technical cases and the publications, which I won't show you all of them, but this team is producing 50, 60, 70 publications a year now. And it's incredible. And volume means that you have cases that you can look at. You can study your various operations. You can ask very specific questions. Here it's focusing on adenocarcinoma in the periampullary area, which includes pancreas, ampullary, duodenal, and cholangio. And we're able to ask very interesting questions. And for many of these patients, we actually have specimens that are banked away, and some of them we've sent to the Orion Project, where we have avatars for. So you can ask some very, very interesting questions. So if you look at how our program has evolved, I think we were a standard high volume program, and Marco and now Atsushi has Oba has joined us, and we're going after the more locally advanced cancer patients. And you can see that over the past 7, 8 years, we've maintained our volume with the resectable, increased our volume with the borderline resectable and the locally advanced. And I don't know where our numbers sit in 2025. I haven't seen the numbers yet, but whatever it is, we're slowly gaining traction, and we're getting referrals from around the United States and even around the world. And it's not just about volume, it's also about outcomes, right? So when I started training, when I was a resident, like many of the people in the room, 5-year survival from pancreatic adenocarcinoma was dismal, right? It was in the 10% range after resection, 15% if you were lucky. Now we can expect 30 to 40% 5-year survival after resection of pancreatic adenocarcinoma. And every year it gets a little bit better, right? So, by the time you're at the end of your careers, it's going to be much better than 30 to 40%. And you know what? This is all the hard work that leads to this. But again, pancreatic cancer, pancreatic surgery is just a small window in this department, right? This department has 8 divisions. And if you look at surgical volume over the years, you can see what's gone on since 2012 to what's projected in 2026, right? That's a huge amount of growth in cases. You can see there's also a trend that you can pick up there. More and more of our cases are being done as an outpatient, right? Whereas in 2012, very few of our patients were outpatient cases. And so that segment is increasing greatly. If you look at the size of this department, so in 2012, look at how many full-time faculty we had, and then look at how many we have now in 2025, right? And we've grown all the different areas, MDs, surgeons. We've grown somewhat our PhD research staff, and our APPs have exploded. Look at where we were in 2012, and look at how many APP faculty we have now in 2025, right? So, and the beauty of being here for almost 14 years is I've had a hand in recruiting almost everyone in this room, which is a great feeling. If you look at revenue, so of course, if you grow faculty, if you grow research, you've got to grow the money, right? The money's got to come from somewhere. And you can see over the years, we've grown all the revenues coming in to the Department of Surgery. So I never imagined when I was in high school that I would be running a $250 million operation, right? A $250 million operation in the Department of Surgery, right? That's big, right? And it takes a lot of talented people, takes coordination, and look at all the work all of you have done. I think Education in the Department of Surgery is extremely strong. Kathy has built this education department that really is the envy of this campus and many other places. And, it wasn't easy, right, Kathy, when you first came, but we did it, right? And then Mark Naylor and many other program directors have done a great job at recruiting really top talent from around the country and around the world. And, I'm proud to say that for many of our programs in general surgery, urology, plastics, whatever, everyone at least considers us, and many people want to train at the University of Colorado. Research, right? So I'm proud to say that in the last 5 years, we've always been in the top 20 of about 180 academic departments in terms of NIH dollars. And one year we were actually even number 9 in terms of NIH funding by Blue Ridge. This is 2024. The 2025 data aren't out yet, but you can see the University of Colorado was number 18, better than Johns Hopkins, which was 21. But I'm just pointing this out. I'm not going to make any specific comments. University of Rochester, the Department of Surgery is number 15. So I think there's some work that still needs to be done. So the other kind of pride, and many of you don't even know much about this, was taking over the Cancer Center. So I became the director in 2018. And that also is a big job. There are 278 members of the Cancer Center. So these are PIs, typically people with NIH grants that run programs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very multidisciplinary. It crosses several universities. CSU is involved in our Cancer Center. It involves many campuses, and really was eye-opening to me. I'm proud to say that our metrics in the Cancer Center in terms of research and NCI funding and all that kind of business is good. The Cancer Center members produce about 800 or so publications a year, so quite productive. The other thing I'm proud of is that when I took over, this is what the senior leadership looked like. A very homogenous looking group. And I know in this day and age, you're not supposed to point these things out, but not very many women involved in the leadership in the Cancer Center. This is what the Cancer Center leadership looks like now, right? So we have people from all walks of life, from all over the place, and half the leaders in the Cancer Center are actually women, right? And I think that leadership and departments and your trainees should reflect the population that you take care of or are in charge of, right? And I think we were very successful in the Department of Surgery. The other thing that I'm very proud of is this multidisciplinary model that we brought to the University of Colorado. I think many of you know about this already, so I'm not going to spend time, but this is something that Cheryl McGee has helped us lead, and we've deployed this for every cancer, where every new cancer patient who enters will go to a multidisciplinary clinic where you have multiple experts in all the different areas: surgery, oncology, radiation, pathology, radiology, and everyone looks at the patient data, looks at the scans, and helps to make the decision, right? And here's a timeline of the growth of multidisciplinary clinics. That's a map, a cartoon map of Colorado and where people can enter this multidisciplinary apparatus. And if you look at our patient volumes, so this is the Metro Denver Oncology practice volume by fiscal year. You can see every year we're marching up, right? And if you look statewide, every year we're increasing. And if you look at market share, in the state of Colorado, we dominate cancer care, right? In the Denver Metro, we're about to dominate. You can see the trend line. Red is UC Health, and our competitors are the other colors, but you can see the trend line for red, both in Colorado and Metro Denver, is increasing. And this is because of all of your hard work. But volume alone is not the most important thing, right? You have to have quality. And if you look at 5-year survival rates, right? So these are all comers. Everyone who shows up to clinic, whether you're stage 4, stage 1, stage 2, whatever, look at 5-year survival rates compared to the rest of Colorado, right? Prostate, 99% versus 90%. Breast, 95 versus 94. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, 81 versus 74. Rectal, 77 versus 75. Liver, 41 versus 20. Lung, 46% 5-year survival versus 26% 5-year survival. Pancreatic, 26, almost 27 versus 13. So this is my second to last slide. So I basically went to the Department of Surgery website, looked up all the division chiefs. I'm missing Robert Sina. Robert, raise your hand. New division of pediatric surgery chief, just started January 1st. So don't forget to shake his hand and welcome him on the way out. But I put up all the division chiefs. Of course, Robert McIntyre, your interim chair, and all the vice chairs and associate vice chairs. I'm sure I missed 1 or 2 people, so don't, skewer me. But if you're on the website, you're on this list. But this department, the Department of Surgery, is actually in great hands with the leadership. Steph Farmer is a great financial steward and, has always steered me in the right direction. Rob's going to do a terrific job. Andy Meacham really has run this department, and I get most of the credit, but he's the guy who's really done a lot of stuff. And Duncan, of course, Wilcox has been really running a great children's program. And I don't have time to go through everyone on this list, but you all have contributed so much to this Department of Surgery, and I am so appreciative. And I know you're going to do great things, and that's why I'm confident in leaving this Department of Surgery, right? It's actually in great shape. Thank you for your attention.
That little microphone there, that's not one of those things that you could just drop on the floor. We have just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask a question, and then if somebody has a question they want to ask, please do so. But I noticed how you purposefully use the plural to mentor, and I can't imagine that the individuals that you pointed out are very similar. How do these mentors mesh together in a way that you took advantage of that people here might think about when they're working with mentors?
Yeah. Well, you'll notice that 3 of them are surgical leaders, right? So it was not infrequent that all 3 of them got together and proposed me for something or pushed me into a leadership position somewhere. So, but there are other times when I wanted to keep things separate because, they sometimes fought with each other and disagreed with each other. So, it's a balance. It's life. Life is messy, right? And it's like having parents, right? Parents don't always agree with what, the best thing to do is. And sometimes you use your parents together, and sometimes you want to separate them and go to them individually, depending on who gives you the answer that you want, right? So, and I think, in similar fashion, I did that. But I think, being a good mentee is so important, right? I mean, taking the time every once in a while to thank people. Like I sent Murray Brennan an email recently, just for no reason. I just said, Murray, I just want to thank you for all the things that you've taught me and all the doors that you've opened. He wrote back and he said, Rich, that's very kind of you. I don't get many of these emails anymore. Think about that.
Anyone else have a question? Thanks again for presenting today.
Thank you. Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.